Well, you've seen some of the mania surrounding Donald Trump's inauguration. I think it's of two species. One is the violence, and I think that's professional protesters who are being paid in many cases, the street teams of Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, I don't know more. It's all the same. It's all funded by the same radical sides. George Soros is behind much of it. But there's another expression of deep emotion too, and it's the extreme victimology. People who say that, oh my God, Donald Trump is truly the new Hitler and he's going to have concentration camps for Jews or gays or Muslims or blacks or whatever it is. It's a sheer panic that looks like a psychological illness. And it wasn't until I read a brilliant article by our next guest that I understood what was going on. He came up with a name for it, and he joins us now to explain. I'm referring to Dr. Saad from Concordia University, and I'm worried I'll get it wrong if I try and say it. Tell me the title of the research chair you have at Concordia, because I think it so perfectly nails the expertise needed to properly diagnose the kookiness here. Tell me the chair you sit in at Concordia University.
So it's the Concordia University Research Chair in Evolutionary Behavioral Sciences and Darwinian Consumption.
Well, that's a mouthful, but I think it's a real, I mean, you're a PhD, you're a scholar, you look at how we consume not just goods, but feelings and friendships and emotions and politics, and you've focused on this victimology. Tell me a little bit about it, describe your observations, and then tell me the name you've given to this syndrome. I think this is brilliant, folks.
Thank you for having me, Ezra, and thank you for the kind words. So in 2010, I had written an academic paper in a medical journal where I was looking at a syndrome known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Let me give you the background to that. So Munchausen syndrome is where somebody feigns an illness so that they can garner empathy and sympathy. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is where you take somebody who's under your care, say your biological child, and you harm that child to garner the empathy and sympathy. And so when I saw all of the social justice warriors and their victimology ethos, and then I saw the hysteria associated with the Trump victory, I thought that this was a form of collective Munchausen, where at the collective level, all of these people are so desperate to identify as victims that they create these hysterical realities that are perfectly removed from reality, but that ultimately give them those ego strokes. I am a victim. I am going to be whisked away to the Donald Trump concentration camps.
It's incredible. I mean, I was looking at the imagery from those women's marches, not just in the United States, especially in the U.S., but we even had some here in Canada. They were, in the main, wealthy white women. In Washington, D.C., they came in by jet plane. Those are $500 plane tickets. Maybe they had $500 hotel rooms. These were luxurious, wealthy, free women who had celebrities speaking to them, who could say whatever they want, put whatever they want on a placard. I mean, it was the proof that they were not victims. Had they been protesting some fascist state, they would have been banned from the city, they would have been rounded up, they would have been hit by police with batons. Their very protests proved its own falseness, and yet, you know, some of them were weeping, and I think they truly believe it, or at least they've made themselves believe it. What's the payoff for them? Is it gives them a higher status, that they can blame someone else for their own failures, that it gives them an identity that's more flavorful than their own? Why do they do this?
So the celebrities in particular have actually described their behavior using another psychiatric mechanism. So think of the person who survives after a plane crash, right? They often experience what's referred to as survival guilt, right? Why is it that I was spared, but other good people died? And I think celebrities, if you like, succumb to existential guilt, right? In the deep recess of their minds, they know that ultimately they're not worthy of all the adulation and adoration and all the money that is thrown at them. And so the only way that they can fix that psychic injury is to then engage in lofty pursuits. I am a victim. I'm fighting for justice. I am taking up causes. But that's only to ultimately reduce the angst that they feel in private when they're about to go to sleep, that they're ultimately frauds that are not deserving of all this attention.
That speaks to the celebrities. I think you're spot on. I mean, I think of someone like Leonardo DiCaprio, super rich guy, hottest supermodels he dates all the time, huge yacht, jet set lifestyle, and yet he's talking about reducing carbon footprint. I mean, the only way those two things can be squared is if he's trying to prove he's not this fraud and this fake. But what about an ordinary woman who, let's just say a 40-year-old mom, or maybe not a mom, maybe a single, let's say a 30-year-old lawyer from Manhattan, making six figures, life couldn't be better, living it up, that comes down from Manhattan to New York, to Washington to protest out of terror. Like, what's the payoff for her?
So here, I think we use another evolutionary phenomenon. So think of the peacock's tail, right? The peacock's tail is meant to advertise your genetic quality to the prospective hens. Look at my peacock. Here I am surviving. Look at the phenotypic quality of my tail. Please choose me. I'm the good guy to mate with. Well, virtue signaling is a form of signaling, right? Just like we signal our status by the Maserati that we drive, we signal by our tail if we're a peacock. Virtue signaling becomes a form by which I demonstrate to the world that, I am a worthy person. I take on serious issues. That's why I then post on my Facebook page my sign that I was attending this event, right? And so it becomes a runaway form of peacocking, where what you are signaling is how virtuous you are, how pure you are morally, but it's all fake. It's all posing. Because if you truly wanted to fight for the rights of women, as I stated on my social media portals, you should be fighting for the rights of women in the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, isn't that interesting? Tell me about the peer pressure involved here, because I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of women who came to these marches. I mean, there's no denying it was quite a show of force. Now, I put it to you, a lot of that was subsidized and organized by professionals, but still, to get people out, that's a real thing. How does the collective work there? I mean, is there a mob mentality, or is it sort of, if you don't join the team, you're not a real woman? This is the spirit of the times. You're either with us or you're with the Nazis. What is this? What's the discipline effect of a mass group of women doing this together?
Well, look, coalitional psychology is an innate element of our mental architecture, right? If you bring in a bunch of people into the lab and you just give them a stick of red or blue, completely random cue, they will start assorting with one another, depending on whether they're wearing the blue sticker or the red sticker, right? Because we tend to band with in-group members and disassociate with out-group members. And so if I am a virtuous person, if I want to signal that I fight for progressive values, I surely don't want to be left behind. I surely want to show that I also put in the effort to participate in this great struggle for women's rights in North America, and therefore I wouldn't be caught dead not attending the event. So of course it's all about herd mentality.
Yeah. Now you yourself come from, you were originally born in Lebanon, which was a fairly harmonious, beautiful country. They used to call Beirut the Paris of the Middle East. I think Lebanon is not where it was at its worst. Obviously, it's had a revival, but still, it's a place where there really were people being rounded up on ethnic basis. There were death squads. There was terrorism, and I ask you that because you mentioned the Middle East is where the front line of women's rights is. Iran, Saudi Arabia, the Islamic State being one of the worst examples with their actual rape slaves that are approved by their imams. I'm not going to ask you the easy question, what would women in the third world think of these peacocking virtue signalers in Washington? But let me ask you a different way. How do you get virtue signalers who would tell you, well, I'm doing the best I can, or it's all motivated by good things. How do you transform so much energy and passion that's actually selfish and useless? How do you transform that energy, passion, time, and money into something useful? How could you possibly get those 500,000 women in Washington, D.C. to care about the Yazidi rape slaves, to care about women forced to wear burqas in Saudi Arabia or Iran? How can you transform that wasteful narcissism into useful healing of the world, Gad?
I think you have to get into the ideological trenches. It really is a battle of ideas, right? So they don't speak against the Yazidi women because they have succumbed to, their brains have been parasitized by cultural relativism, right? Who am I as a Western woman to criticize the practices of those brown people over there? That would be racist. And this is why I do what I do, because I inhabit an ecosystem that regrettably is completely defined by political correctness. So the best way to get them to channel their energies in a better way is to actually win the battle of ideas, to actually convince them that if you truly believe in women's rights, yes, of course, there are things that we can improve in North America when it comes to women's rights, but you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck if you help us fight for the rights of our sisters in the Middle East. So it's all about trench warfare, ideological trench warfare, and hopefully the right side will win the battle of ideas.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.